Shots from the Hip presents Sports History. Here are Jason and Oz.
Certainly one of the observations that's been made about the NBA playoffs is, particularly in the first round, these very often these series become a foregone conclusion. There is often a disparity of talent in a, let's say number 1 versus number 8 or a 2 versus 7 matchup in the NBA playoffs, and you often get a lot of blowouts in these series. It used to be that the first round was 5 games. You can understand why it's 7 games. It's an extra couple of games on each side of the bracket, potentially. Okay, I get it. But still, most of these series are over after 5 games. Now, one of the statistics that we heard, especially during the Lakers Rockets series. So one of the statistics that we heard is, of course, there have been 161 of these series that have started 3-0. Okay. And of course, no NBA team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in the playoffs. But not only that, it hasn't even been close. All right. Take a look at these statistics here. All right. If you start at 3-0, almost 61% of the time you're going to get swept. All right. Another 29% of the time you're going to lose in 5 games. Okay. So basically, if you go down 3-0, you probably don't have more than 2 games left in your season. You might steal one, but you probably 61% of the time will not. Finally, check this out. 7.5% of the time, the series goes to 4-2. Only 4 teams that have been down 3-0 have even forced a game 7. Right? It is the point here, I guess, is it is extremely hard to win 3 games in a row if you are the underdog. Never mind 4 games in a row, which to this point has never been done. Okay, this continued this year. But what I wanted to talk about was the 4 times that a team was down 3-0 and came back to make it 3-3 and whatever happened, because we talked about this statistic all the time during the playoffs, but we didn't actually talk about those 4 teams that had done this, right? So here we go. Let's take a look at some of these. So most of these are pretty interesting. Okay, most recently, this was done by the 2022-2023 Miami Heat over these Boston Celtics, who again have been on a similar path since they played in the finals in 2022 against Golden State, and since they won the finals in 2024. This is basically the continuing team that continues to this day and recently got bumped by the Philadelphia 76ers. Okay, well, this was the season that really solidified Jimmy Butler's reputation as becoming Michael Jordan once the playoffs start. This was the year, I mentioned them previously. This was the year when the Miami Heat went from the play-in game to the championship. All right. Again, based a lot on the heroics of Jimmy Butler. Hang on just a moment here. I am calling up my notes for this because I do have a lot of notes on this particular series. Here we go. All right. So, of course, Jimmy Butler was the main man here. All right. Miami goes up 3-0. They win their first 2 in Boston pretty handily. Boston starts coming back. Boston wins the next 2. Game 6 is a classic Game 6. I don't know what it is about Game 6 in these playoff series. Game 6 was a classic. They went on a buzzer beater. Um, in that game, that was a great game for the Celtics because Tatum, the superstar, went 0 for 8 on threes in that game, and yet they still managed to win. Tatum also really showed some nice leadership in that game, 17 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 15 of 15 from the line. So he was certainly doing his part despite the fact that he was shooting cold. Um, but here we go into game 7. Butler takes over. 28 points on 28 shots. However, the real key to this game was a dude named Caleb Martin. Okay? Caleb Martin, who was a guy who had been averaging under 10 points a game in the regular season, didn't even start for half the season. In this game, played 45 minutes and got himself 26 points and 10 rebounds. Pretty good from the wing. In the end, the Heat went on to get smoked by the Denver Nuggets in the finals, and is what's looking like the Nuggets' first and only championship run. All right. Previous to that, 20 years prior to that, it happened again. The Dallas Mavericks win up 3-0 on the Portland Trailblazers. Now, before we get more into that, I should say this was the Dallas Mavericks, famously of Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash, and Michael Finley. It was back in the days before the Big Three was even a fashionable expression. They also had a couple of other interesting players. They had Eduardo Nájera, who I believe is still the only Mexican national to play in the NBA. He was a nice big man for the team. And they also had the immortal Sean Bradley. I'm sure even you remember Sean Bradley, Jason. The team that the Mavericks were playing that year were the Portland Trailblazers. Now, these were the Portland Trailblazers that have been recently immortalized in the Netflix series, The Jailblazers. Now, I don't know if you remember these guys, but this was a wild bunch of guys who had many interesting issues and problems throughout the first 3-4 years of the aughts. This was a team with guys like Rasheed Wallace, Dale Davis, Bonzi Wells, Ruben Patterson, Zach Randolph, all really high quality star players. Like I said, with issues. This was a pretty forgettable series ultimately. Aside from the 3-0, 3-3 runs. For example, in Game 5, the Mavericks scored 79 points. Classic hangover game, it looked like at the time. Well, we partied a bit too much last night, so we're only good for 79 points in this game. More interestingly, the Mavericks ended up beating the Sacramento Kings, who famously the year before had lost in the Western Conference Finals to the Lakers, primarily based on a buzzer beater by Robert Horry in Game 6, which was, an immortal moment in Lakers history, but a moment of ignominy for the Kings, who were looking to go to the NBA Finals for the first time ever. But the Kings, trying to run it back, just got beaten by the Mavericks in 7 games, and the Mavericks eventually went on to get smoked by the Spurs, who smoked the Nets in the finals. So you're seeing a theme here. Typically, if you go in these 3-3 battles, you get tuckered out, I think is the point. Okay, prior to this, we have to go back another 19 years. Another 9 years. Let's go back to the 93-94 Utah Jazz. Now, of course, this was the similar team to the one that played in 2 championships against the Bulls. The Jazz, of course, were Stockton and Malone. The opponents in this series, however, were the more interesting Denver Nuggets. Now, the Denver Nuggets that year were led by Dikembe Mutombo, who is at the height of his powers here. Not much more on the roster. Mahmoud Abdul Rauf was also on the team, but Rafe LaFrenz maybe is your third guy on those teams. So not exactly a team of superstars. Now, the Denver Nuggets may be the more interesting team here. Previously, in the previous round, they had beaten the Seattle Supersonics. Those are the Supersonics of Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. The interesting thing about that was this was the first time a number 8 had beaten a number 1. And in a 5-game series, Denver went down 2-0 before coming back and winning all 3. Now, this was the Sonics team. They were number 1 seed. They were favored to go to the finals. They had played against the Bulls in the finals previously. They were by far the favorites. Instead, the Nuggets knocked them off. Now, what happens here? The Jazz go up 3-0. And I remember at the time, nobody counted out the Nuggets, right? They had just come back against the number 1 team, looked unstoppable. Sure enough, grounded out. Really fantastic games 4, 5, and 6. Every game is a nail biter. No game won by more than 4 points in this run. In game 3, actually, even going into this, in game 3, Denver had the lead with 10 seconds left before Malone tied it up. So basically, games 3 through 7 are all nail biters. Some really good stuff if you ever watch the replay. Really nice 90s basketball. But ultimately, what happened in the year when Michael Jordan is not playing in the league, the Jazz win this series, go on, get smoked by the Houston Rockets, who eventually go on to play in the finals against the New York Knicks in what was one of the ugliest 7-game NBA finals ever played, and was mostly known for being intercut with the O.J. Simpson highway chase. That was almost more exciting than the game, although that wasn't very exciting either. Finally, prior to this is when it really gets wild. You have to go back to 1951 for this to happen. Now, this is the dinosaur days of the NBA. All right, 1950. 1950. It says 1950. It should be 1951. Let's say the 1950-51 Rochester Royals, who later become the Sacramento Kings after a few more moves. Now, somehow, this is Rochester, New York. Somehow, Rochester came out of the West Division to play the New York Knickerbockers, or the Knicks at that time. Now, again, the NBA is a completely different game. It's still not even considered a major sport. I mean, again, they're mostly playing in the Northeast, at least professionally. There was a team in Minnesota called the Lakers, right, which is why they're still called the Lakers, because they're from the land of lakes. There's not too many lakes in Los Angeles, but
No.
you had teams as far west as Minnesota in this league, but it's mostly considered a regional game. You really only have one player in the league playing what we would consider modern basketball, which was George Mikan. George Mikan, of course, was a beast of a man. He was about 6'10", playing in a league of guys who were 6 foot at best, maybe. So he really dominated at the rim. He was a Wilt Chamberlain. He was a Shaquille O'Neal of his day. However, not too many guys are playing above the rim. You have it's a lot of outside shooting. It's a different game. Mostly what I can say about this finals is, for example, this is far back in almost basketball prehistory. The players in this game are more well known for what they did after. For example, Red Holtzman, who played for Rochester in this series, later became the Knicks head coach for 16 seasons, and is famously known as the only NBA title winning head coach for the Knicks. He was the coach when they won the championship in 1970, 1973. Uh, Playing for the Knicks was Dick McGuire, who also coached the Knicks before Holtzman, but and ultimately went on TV, did a lot of coaching in the NBA, and as a player, he's one of 9 players whose number is retired by the Knicks. Although to be fair, he wore number 15, and also wearing number 15 was the great Earl the Pearl Monroe. So it's kind of a combination retirement jersey there. However, the point is that these are formative guys in NBA history playing in this game. This game was kind of a defining moment for the NBA, even though it was an all New York State game. Because of the 3-0-0-3 comeback, this really it sort of put the NBA onto the sports pages a lot more than it had been in the previous 3 years of the league. This is really a breakthrough series for the league. Game 7 was played in front of 4,200 fans.
Wow.
Imagine that. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that nowadays. And was pretty much, by all accounts, deemed to be a thriller. You rarely had buzzer beaters in the early days of the NBA. But in this game, at one point, the Royals were down by 12, but they managed to come back by the end of the fourth quarter. Okay, to give you an example of the low scoring nature of these games, with about 2 minutes left, the score was 74-71. And the final score was 79-74. Now that's 9 points in 2 minutes. This was considered a flurry in those days. Okay, that was considered a lot of points in a short amount of time. 9 in 2 minutes. Nowadays, you've got the New York Knicks scoring 72 in 18 minutes, right? So so no big deal nowadays. But in those days, hey, that was a shootout. And so the first time a team came back from 3-0 to force the game 7 proved to be an important date in NBA history. I'm not sure what we can learn from all of this, again, except for in the modern era, if you allow that team to come back from a 3-0 deficit and make it close, you may not see the title that year. I guess is the point here. But it was good to take a look back at these teams for me because, again, like they kept talking this statistic during the playoffs this year, and they never said anything about the teams. And these teams are memorable. I remember those Jazz. I remember those Nuggets teams. I remember, of course, Miami Heat. It wasn't that long ago. But these were some interesting, fun teams that pulled off that almost pulled off the 3-0 comeback. But ultimately, it's tough to win 4 games as the underdog in the NBA. So I don't know if you learned anything, but I hope you enjoyed that trip down NBA memory lane here on.
Well, I have a question for you. So
Sure.
let's say an NBA starting 5.
Mhm.
Obviously, those are going to be your top 5 players, I would assume, that start a game. How many minutes would you say they play a game?
Are you talking about the playoffs? Because what typically happens is this: in the regular season, you have 12 players on your active roster, maybe 10, sometimes 11 get into your average game. Okay, you're playing most of your players. Once you get into the playoffs, that rotation shrinks, right? So, in other words, you're going down to your first 9 guys, and the 9th guy is literally getting 1-2 minutes a game. So This was, as I alluded to, this was part of the problem with Jason Tatum in this series. Okay. Guy gets an Achilles injury, comes back. If he's playing in the regular season, okay, that means that he'll be on a minutes restriction. He'll play 25, 28 minutes a game. But here's the thing, Jason Tatum is playing for Joe Masula, who's a maniac and whose rotation in the playoffs is down to 7 or 8 guys. And so Tatum's going in there playing 40, 42 minutes a game. Right? Now, that's expected. That's expected from your studs. I was talking about Jimmy Butler in Game 7 in 2023. He played 45 minutes in that game. That's out of a potential 48, right? That's the thing. That's what they say. Look, that's what they say about football, man. When you're in the playoffs, you're leaving it on the field, right? And when you're in the playoffs in the NBA, if you're in a Game 7, maybe 7 players are going to get quality minutes, you know? And that means that 7th player is going to be on the floor for 29, 30 minutes. Everybody else is playing 35 to 40, maybe more, because you got to leave it on the floor. You have to. You have to. And again, those rotations shrink in the playoffs. Now, if you're something like the Thunder, if you're something like the Knicks, you can afford to have your starters, your best guys go 35 minutes. You're still that deep in the playoffs. Okay, this Oklahoma City Thunder roster is ridiculous. I mean, they've got all-stars, 8th, 9th guy. I mean, it's insane how far down the bench they can go on these teams. But if you're the Lakers, in this situation, I mean, LeBron's playing 45 minutes a game. He's playing more minutes than his age, which is pretty hard to do in your 40s. Now, that's the playoffs. NBA fans know, and I wanted to ask you this, so this would be a good place to leave this one. NBA fans have become convinced that it's a different game. The playoffs become a different game than the regular season. And I was wondering if you felt that way. Does it work the same way in the NHL? It doesn't look like it to me, but I don't know that much. So, I mean, does the NHL game change in the playoffs?
I don't feel it changes a lot from the team perspective. I feel it changes a lot from a officiating perspective, because a lot of the times in the playoffs, a lot of things that would be penalties called in the regular season aren't called in the playoffs because they have bigger implications.
Yeah. Let them play. Let them play is the mentality there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This also, I would say, this also happens in the NBA as well. Yeah. There's a lot more, let them mix it up inside. This is why Rudy Gobert becomes so valuable in the playoffs. They'll let him beat guys up a little bit more than they do in the regular season. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. There's also this in the NBA as well. But it does change. The intensity changes. The strategy changes. And definitely the rotations change. I guess there's not really an equivalent in hockey because you have to make those line substitutions. You have to. You can't leave those guys on the ice for 10 minutes. They would die, right? And so, I guess there's not really an equivalent there, but it's pronounced in the NBA. It's really
and that's why that's what I was going to mention. That's why I asked the question about how many minutes a night guys play, because you're talking about these teams that defeat these other teams in Game 7s that have come back from 3-0, and then they go on to get killed the next series. And it's because they're exhausted. Obviously, they gotta be.
And the other team, anytime you go to a Game 7, especially as we've seen in the NBA playoffs, when most series just don't go 7, if you're going 7, that means the other team is rested. That means the other team is rested. And let me tell you, the one team that is happy, the one group of fans that is happiest with Minnesota Timberwolves right now are the Thunder. Automatically, that's 2-3 more days that San Antonio is going to be on the floor. They're going to be on the road. 2-3 more days for the Thunder, who presumably are going to sweep the Lakers. more rest time for them. Like they need it, but they're going to get it, right? Because just automatically more games, less rest, you know? So it's a big advantage to sweep. It's a big advantage to sweep. And every time an underdog whips off another loss, that's good for the next opponent. Yeah, that's not so good for the it's not so good for the winning team of that series. You know, so yeah, and so I feel like in hoops, that's what you want to do. This is also why you see a lot of times you see a game that's supposed to be close, and suddenly turns into a blowout early, and then what you'll often see is the coach will just sit all his starters, right? Oh, well, we've lost this one, and we're going to have to play another playoff game. So I'm going to just rest all these guys. This really began with Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr used to do this with the Warriors. They'd be up in the series 3-0 or something like that. Game 4, they go down 10 points in the first quarter. That's it. That's it. I'm just throwing it right now. There's no point. There's no point in going to overtime in this game and lose, right? There's just no point. So I'm not even going to risk it. And they would just sit everybody. It's a decent strategy. But again, you would never do that in the regular season. You'd never do that in the regular season, right? It's a tactic. You can do that in the NBA now. So haven't really seen it too much this year yet. In fact, one other thing I should say, one last thing about the NBA playoffs this year. Round 1, we saw more games we saw more games than at any point in the last 14 years. So in other words, despite the fact that there were 2 sweeps, most of these series went much longer than expected, much longer than average. Yeah. So there was a few 7-game series, a few 6-game series, and like I said, only 2 sweeps. There's usually a lot more 5 and sweeps in the NBA. So it was a good playoffs, good round 1. Good round 1. No 3-0 comebacks, but good round 1.
Maybe someday.
Well, we have yet to see it. How many times has this happened in hockey? Because it's happened a few times in hockey. But do you recall off the top of your head?
That is a good question, and a quick Google search will.
Yeah. There's actually a page. There's actually a page on Wikipedia. Teams that have come back from 3-0 deficit in playoffs. I had it called up previously, but naturally, I'm not ready to go for this show.
Well, we will see.
Most famously in baseball, this was the Red Sox, who shed the Yankees curse in the playoffs in 2004. Okay, here it is on Wikipedia.
Wow.
This is list of teams that have overcome 3-0 series deficits is the name of the page on Wikipedia. Background.
Only 4.
Oh, okay. Wow, 1942. Wow.
That shocks me.
Yeah.
That shocks me that only 4 teams have come back.
Holy hell, you're kidding me. 1942, the Toronto Maple Leafs come back. Is that the last time they've won the cup?
No, they won the cup in 19.
I know it's been a long time.
I want to say 60 something.
Okay.
62.
I know it's been a long time. Okay, so the Islanders in 75. I don't quite remember that. The Flyers in 2010, right? I do remember that one. And the Kings. Oh yes, 2014. Right.
The Sharks.
That was the year I moved back to Los Angeles.
Oh,
I remember that team. Yeah, I remember that team. Yeah, that was a great team. They officially became my favorite NHL team that year. So I remember them. Okay, they have the Japan series in here. This is great. Oh yeah, okay, here we go. They listed the unsuccessful comebacks in the NBA. All right, here we go. So if you want to see the summation of what I just presented to you, here it is on Wikipedia.
There it is.
Fantastic. Yep, and as you can see, it's incredibly rare. It's only happened the once in Major League Baseball. And it's never happened in basketball. It's happened 4 times in hockey. So someday, maybe we will see the best of 7 comeback. I can just imagine this year the Knicks going up 3-0 on Oklahoma, and then they choke it all away. And then I can finally answer the question that you put to me, Jason. In any case, all right. Well, we've taken up more than enough time, have we not? We should sign it off.
Let's close the book on sports
close the
history.
Right.